Hey everybody, I'm Eric with Corter Leather, and in this video we're going to be putting together our DIY bifold kit. So this is the basic kit, and this comes with everything you need to make a bifold. We also have our expansion kit. Now what the expansion kit includes is just an extra outside pocket and an inside liner. So you don't need this to put together a functional bifold, it just makes it a little more fancy. So we're going to go through and show you what's in every kit. We're going to open it up. This is the bifold kit itself. Inside we have an instruction sheet, and this is just a visual instruction to show you the steps that you need to go through to put the wallet together. On the other side, it has what you can do before you put the wallet together, and then just some general finishing tips after that we'll go through in this video. We have our canvas bag with all of our leather pieces in it. This is the front of the wallet, the exterior shell as we like to call it. This is the interior of the wallet. All of your pockets are going to attach to this piece. And then we also have our pockets. So you're going to have 4 T pockets, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 bottom pockets. And then the last thing we have in here is our little accessory bag. Now this bag is going to include everything that you need to put the wallet together, except for we're going to need a lighter and a pair of scissors, and that's it. So in our accessory bag, we have a little piece of sandpaper. We'll use that at the end to finish our edges. We have a little saddle stitching guide, and on the back you have how to backstitch. We'll show you how to do that in this video. And then most importantly, we have our Ritza Tiger thread, which is a waxed synthetic thread, and 2 needles, because with a saddle stitch you need to use 2 needles. And so those are the contents of the basic kit. And in our bifold expansion kit, this is just a couple extra pieces if you want to use them that are available separately. So we have a little instruction kit as well, visual instructions as well, and this shows you have a liner for the inside of the shell, and then you have an extra pocket on the outside, kind of a easy access pocket, and those are in this canvas bag, and it's just 2 pieces, pre-cut, pre-punched. So this goes on the outside of the wallet like this, so you can put your most used card in here. And then this is the liner if you put your wallet together and you don't want to see any grain sticking out from the top, which is a personal preference. This liner piece just goes right in here, and you sew it up when you sew the top of your wallet together. So you have that option as well if you want to go for the expansion kit. We're going to put together the basic kit, but we'll show you where you'll put the extra pieces if you get the expansion. So the first step we need to do is we need to sew across the top of our exterior shell. Now, if you have the expansion kit, you're going to want to glue in your liner on the inside like this, and then you're also going to want to glue in your pocket on the outside, so that when you sew across this top, you'll get all these pieces that you need to attach into the wallet. You're sewing all of them at the same time. To get your stitch length, or to get your thread length, what we're going to do is we're going to measure about 4 times the distance of the thing that we're going to stitch. So I'm going to take my thread, and I'm going to give myself a little extra, like a couple inches on either side. So then all I'm going to do is do 2, 3, 4, and clip. And this is a good stitch line to start with if you've never saddle stitched before, because it'll teach you to just do a basic straight stitch. So now we need to thread our needles, and a saddle stitch uses 2 needles, 1 on either end. I'm going to show you how to thread the needle and lock it in right now. So because we're using a thick wax saddle thread, I've cut my thread at kind of an angle, and the Ritza Tiger thread is sort of a flat wound thread. It's really nice. So we're going to thread our needle through, and cutting it at that angle will make threading the needle really simple. You just kind of throw it on. And then to lock it in, we're going to go down about 1 inch or 2. We're going to take the pointy end of the needle, and we're going to pierce through the thread. And this can be a little bit tricky. There we go. Then we're going to pull this thread down and then pull it tight. And now that's locked our thread onto the needle without tying a knot, because if we tie a knot, It's going to be too big to get through our stitching holes. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So I have my thread kind of cut at an angle so it goes through the eye of the needle easily. Then I'm going to go down an inch or two with the pointy end of my needle, and I'm going to pierce that thread, pull it down, pull it tight. So now we have our thread with a needle on either end. We're ready to saddle stitch. The top of our exterior shell is the side that has the holes all the way across. There's a gap right here. This is for the bottom because we'll have pockets on one side, pockets on the other, no stitching in the middle. So I'm going to start by putting one needle in the furthest hole. Then I'm going to put my second needle in the second hole. And I'm going to pull those both out and pull them tight. Now if you have a stitching pony, you can clamp this in a stitching pony for sure. We're not going to show you how to do it without a stitching pony. So the way that we're doing this, we call it the leapfrog stitch. And we're going to take our back thread and we're going to put it in the hole with the second thread in it. Then we're going to pull through. Now we have one full stitch. Then we're going to take that same needle and we're going to put it through a new hole and pull tight. And you have your saddle stitch card here. This is back stitch. You have your saddle stitch card here. This kind of shows you in an illustrated fashion how to do it. So it's always going to be back thread through the hole with the front thread coming through it, and then back around through a new hole. Drop that stitch, pick up the new stitch, the new thread, through the hole with the thread going through it, then back through a new hole. And take our back thread, put the needle through the hole with the front thread going through it, and then through a new hole. And we're going to do that all the way across, and once we get to the end, I'm going to show you how to backstitch and lock off this stitch line. We have our top stitched up. We need to lock off our stitch line to make sure that this thread doesn't come undone over time. Now you can tie a knot. We'll tie knots at different points in this wallet, but for this part we're going to back stitch. It's just like a sewing machine. We're going to sew backwards over the stitches we've already made. Then we're going to use our lighter. Because this is a synthetic thread, we can melt it into place. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew back over the stitches that I just made. And the one important thing is to make sure that your stitches are stacked next to each other. You don't want your stitches to cross over, because over time that'll be a high spot and your thread will rub on things a little more than it should and it might break. So you want to make sure that your stitches are stacking next to each other while you're back stitching. And you can go 2 or 3. I'm going to do kind of a hybrid. I'm going to do, because I want both of my stitches to land on the inside of the wallet, I'm going to do, it's going to end up being kind of 2 back stitches on one thread and 3 back stitches on the other. Like that. So I have 3 back stitches here. My thread is stacked on top of each other. It's not crossing over. And then I have 2 back stitches here, same thing. So now once that's done, we're just going to clip off our thread and leave about less than 1/8 of an inch. You don't need a lot at all. That's a little much, so you can go in and trim it. Then we're going to take our lighter and very gently just melt down this thread without burning the leather. And then just smush it down, and you have your sealed off back stitch and your first stitch line of the wallet. Now it's time to attach some pockets. So the way that the pockets attach, you have 4 holes here. We have 1 hole in the bottom of our pockets. So what we're going to do is we want the pocket to line up on the top hole, and we're going to wrap our thread around the top and the bottom hole twice and tie a knot. And then we're going to go in and we're going to put our second pocket here. We're going to do the same thing. And you can see how, because of this design, instead of having 3 heavy layers stacked on top of each other, they'll kind of like they'll fit like puzzle pieces inside of each other, so that your edges will only have 2 layers instead of 4, and it'll make it a lot more slim in the end. And then our bottom piece is going to go over top like that. So what I like to do is, if you have some extra thread from sewing the top of your front shell, I don't unthread the needle, I just keep the needle threaded. And so what we're going to do on all 4 of these pockets is we're going to go through the bottom hole first and leave enough. We're going to tie just a box knot. So we want to leave enough of a tail so that we can tie that. Then we're going to go through the top hole. Then we go through the bottom hole again. And we go through the top hole again. And then our pocket is locked in, so when we put a card in, the card isn't going to slide all the way down. Now, I like to tie my knot on the inside of the wallet. It might be counterintuitive because you think, well, why don't we tie it on the back? But when this is put together, you're going to be putting your bills in here. So if we have knots exposed on the outside here, it's going to hit it'll hit the bills and it'll be hard to use. If we put them on the inside and we smush them down a bit, you'll never see them. They'll be hidden below this step of the pocket, and it'll work really, really smoothly. So you can do 2 or 3 little knots here, and then all we're going to do is clip this off. And now you see we have 2 holes left. We're going to just do the same thing again. So we're putting our needle through the bottom hole first, and then holding enough with our thumb so that we can tie off enough of a tail to tie off in a knot in the end. Go through. And one more time. And there we go. And then we're just going to tie this off in a knot. You can do 2 or 3 just to lock it in. And then we're going to clip. And there we go, our 2 pockets are installed. Now I have to add, at any point, you're welcome to glue whatever you want. You can cut some nice shapes in your pockets. You can hammer things down. We're just showing you the bare minimum how to get this kit together if you don't have any other tools besides just a pair of scissors and a lighter. But of course, these are designed to completely customize. You can dye the leather, you can tool it, you can cut pocket shapes, you can glue everything down, you can do whatever you want. So I'm going to get the other 2 pockets in on this side, and then I'll come back when I'm showing you how to sew this pocket in, because we have to sew down the centers. Alright, so our next step is to sew in our bottom pockets on each side, and that will pretty much finish up the interior, and then we're ready to sew it to the exterior. So, these pockets only attach by this inside seam until we're sewing the exterior together. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our thread, and we're going to measure about 1 inch over on either side, and then, like usual, we're going to do that length 4 times. So 2, 3, 4. We're going to clip that, and then since there are 2 of them, we're just going to take this measure of thread, and we're going to cut another one so that we have our 2 pieces all measured out. We're going to thread our needles again. Remember, you want 1 needle on either side, and you want to lock that in nice and good so that you don't have needles sliding off while you're trying to sew stuff. And now, when we're going to start, we're just sewing up this 1 line right here. Then we're going to backstitch and cut our thread. Then we're going to start at the bottom here, go up, backstitch, boom, done. So, like I said before, you're welcome to glue this all in, but it's not totally necessary if you don't want to. We're going to put 1 needle in the bottom and 1 needle in the second hole, and we're holding our bottom pocket in. And this is going to shift around a bit until we get the outside sewn in. That's totally normal if you haven't glued it. And then this is a little bit tricky. So we're going to just slowly work our way up, doing our saddle stitch up this stitch line. And the tricky part about it is that we have a bunch of our 3 pockets. So like I said before, they're kind of like puzzle pieces. They all fit together. But when you get to the point where it's time to sew over this seam, you're going to have to kind of maneuver the pocket into place so that it's sitting in the right orientation. So you can see here I'm ready to go into the hole that's going to have the other pocket. I'm going to move this down, and I don't want these to be over top of each other or this way. I want them sitting right next to each other so they're laying flat. So I'm going to hold it like that, and I'm going to put my thread through and my thread through and make sure that's nice and tight. And there we go. There's our first pocket in. Then I'm going to do the same thing again, kind of maneuver this into place, make sure that it's not overlapping or underlapping. And I'm going to go through and make sure that I have a nice flat seam here. And I'm going to go all the way to the top. So, like we did on our wallet shell, now we need to backstitch to lock this stitch in. And once you have everything down, it's going to feel pretty much the same. We're just going to go back over the stitches that we just made, just like a sewing machine, to lock our stitch in. And I'm going to do the same thing where I'm kind of doing one thread is going to have 2 back stitches and one thread is going to have 3 back stitches, because I want both of my threads to end up on the back side of the piece, so that when you're opening the wallet and you look at it, you're not seeing any melted off threads. And again, remember, you want your stitches stacked next to each other. You don't want your stitching crossing over itself to create a high point. There we go. So there's our finished back stitch here. And on the back, we have both of our threads coming out. So I'm going to clip these pretty short. You can kind of, if they fall down, you can kind of fluff them up a little bit so that your lighter can get to them. And we're just going to gently melt these down. And then once they're melted, smush them in, and you have yourself a locked off saddle stitch. So now we just need to repeat that on this side, and then it's time to put the whole wallet together. So now it's time to put the whole wallet together. Now, this is our exterior shell and our interior that we've kind of partially assembled. And if you look, you'll see that our exterior shell is a little bit longer than our interior. Now that's because once we put this together, because you're going to have a bunch of bulk and folded, this piece needs to be longer to reach all the way around the outside here. So putting it together, we're going to do one half, we're going to back stitch, then we're going to do the other half, and when we're done, we're going to have a little bit of a bubble when the wallet's open, right? Let me see if I can do it, right like that. See? So that when it closes, it makes up for that thickness on the inside. So I've already measured my thread and threaded my needles, and I'm doing about 5 to 6 times this length because you have 3 layers here. So you're going to need a little bit more thread than just doing a single layer. And all I'm going to do, it's very similar to the inside seam that we just did. I'm going to start on the right side of the wallet as you're looking on the outside at the top. I'm going to put one needle in the top hole and the second needle in the second hole. And then I'm going to pull those out, and I do this because then I know that I'm in the middle of the thread. So I have equal lengths on both of my needles. And then this is going to be a lot more of the same after this. So we're going to go through, and then we're going to do the same thing where we make sure that our pockets, our little tabs, are laying next to each other, not overlapping or underlapping, so that everything lays nice and smooth. And we're just going to work our way down, and you can make sure you go slow. And again, if you want to glue all this into place, by all means, go for it. You can use contact cement, you can use whatever kind of glue you'd like. But we're just making this video, we're making this in the video with just the stuff in the kit to show you that you can just grab a kit, grab a pair of scissors, and you're good to go. So as I work my way down, I'm just putting the pieces in where they need to go, and I'm making sure everything's nice and even. And if they hang over a little bit, we can trim that after, that's fine. That's what the sandpaper is for. And once we have all 3 of our pockets down, it gets a little bit easier because now we're just going to sew around, and then we're going to backstitch, but we're not going to melt this one. We're going to tie it off on the inside. So I'm going to finish sewing this, and I'll show you how we're going to tie it off after. So I have my 2 back stitches here. I've sewn all the way around. Now to do my 3rd back stitch, what you can do is you could just bring your thread in here, and you could pull this through and clip it and burn it. I don't want a melted thread on the inside of that you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the wallet open, and you got to be careful here a little bit because you can poke your fingers. And I'm going to bring my needle through 2 layers to bring it up in the center of the bill slot. Pull it, and you still want it to stack the right way. And I'm going to do the same on the outside so that we have 3 back stitches here too. And we're going to bring that up through as well and make sure this stacks nice. So now we have our 2 threads in the middle. All we're going to do is tie a couple of knots, and this will keep this nice and secured, but we won't have any melted threads to look at on the finished sides of our wallet. And then I'm just going to clip this off. And if you want, you can also melt this a little bit. I'll show you how to do that. You're going to hold it kind of... You got to be careful of your fingers on this one because it kind of creates like a chimney effect. Let's see if I can do it for the camera. All right. And we're just going to melt these a little bit. And you want to go in and out, because any smoke that you produce is going to singe up this. You don't have to do this, but if you want to, that's how you would do it. So now we just have to do the second half of our wallet, get it all stitched up, and we'll have a functioning wallet ready to go. To sew up our second half of our wallet, this is, again, a little bit tricky, but you'll get it. It just involves kind of creatively holding things if you're not gluing them down. So like we said before, your exterior is going to be a little bit longer than your interior. That's to make up for the thickness when this wallet is closed so that everything will line up. We are going to have a little bubble at the bottom in the center when this is all sewn up, because then when we close the wallet, that's all space that we need for the fold. So we're going to sew this side with the interior facing us, and you're going to want to kind of hold the wallet partially folded so that it'll bring this seam up to match the outside seam. And once you get a couple stitches in, it holds itself and you're good to go. So again, we're going to put 1 wallet in the top hole, or 1 needle in the top hole, 1 needle in the second hole, and we're going to pull that tight. Then we're going to take our back needle, go through our front hole there, and then we're going to go through a new hole. And remember, just like puzzle pieces, we want all of our pockets to line up next to each other, and we don't want anything to overlap. And we're just going to slowly work our way down. Now, if you are gluing, if you're using some sort of like barge contact cement or anything like that, this kind of illustrates why it does make things a little bit easier, because this would all be glued down. You wouldn't have to do any sort of creative holding. But if you're not, it's really not that big of a deal. It takes a quick minute to figure out how to hold things. And over time, your stitching is holding this wallet together. The glue is strong, for sure, but you're not going to really lose much strength by not gluing this together. So as you can see, I'm just kind of, as I hit a new pocket, I'm just kind of putting it where it needs to go, making sure everything's lined up. And then, oh, I did a double stitch there, I wasn't paying attention. If you do a double stitch, just undo it, no big deal. There we go. So now we have all of our pockets locked in, you can see. And I'm still holding some tension here. And you can also put the back of the wallet up against your chest or your stomach or whatever to kind of keep it folded closed. And I'm just going to work my way down. And so after we get probably about 3/4 of this done, you can see that now it's holding itself in place. So this is a little tricky at the start, but now we're just going to sew across and down. We're going to backstitch, and I'm going to do the same thing where I bring the tails of the backstitch into the center of the wallet and tie it off so that we don't have any visible melted threads on the inside or the outside of our wallet. And here we go. We have our finished wallet here, totally assembled. And now you can use this just as it is. It'll age really nice. A wallet like this will last you 10, 15 years easily. And the last thing, we have a piece of sandpaper included in the kit. And this is for if you want to get a little bit fancier. You can go through and you can trim these edges if you want. If you can see on this edge, I got pretty good. But on this edge, we have a little overhang. And so what you can do is you can trim them with an X-Acto blade. I wouldn't really recommend using a pair of scissors. It's hard to cut this leather with scissors. And then once you're trimmed, you can go through and sand down a little bit your edges just to even them out a little bit more. And then what we're going to do is with our canvas bag, and I have just a little bit of water here, we're going to burnish. Now what burnishing does is we're going to rub the edge with our canvas, and that's going to create a bunch of friction, which is going to create a bunch of heat, and it's going to draw the oils from the inside of the hide out, and it's going to seal up our edges. And the reason that it can be good to seal up edges is with a carry good like this, you know, it might get exposed to water or sweat or a lot of oils from your hands over time. And burnishing will make sure that you're not getting, it'll protect the wallet. It'll seal up the edges so that you're not getting a lot of excess moisture getting absorbed through the fibers that are exposed here. And it also just kind of looks nice. You can see how it darkens up. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take a little bit of water, dampen the edges. You don't want them soaking wet. Take your canvas bag. I like to fold mine in two. And you're just going to rub back and forth. And you'll feel the leather grab at first. You don't want to press down super hard. But then it gets more slick, and you'll see it darken and shine up. And that's how you know you're getting a good burnish. So if you want, you can go around the wallet and do that to the whole thing. You can also burnish the tops of your pockets before you assemble them as well. But this is natural vegetable tan leather, so this will naturally burnish over time. What you're doing here is you're basically creating, you're speeding up the wearing process, and you're burnishing the edges before they are used enough to burnish on their own, just to add a little protection. And so that is how to assemble our bifold wallet kit.